The moon landing and the Apollo 11 mission of 1969 is no new concept to people. But how much do we really know about it? In this documentary, we will be talking about the moon landing and the many things that happen alongside it. This will include topics about the Soviet Union during the Cold War, the John F. Kennedy speech that was about the Apollo 11 mission, and the first ever satellite that has orbited the Earth, Sputnik. Now then, let's get started.
The Cold War.
Houston, Roger, we copy.
The Cold War started in 1947 and went on till 1999. It started because of rising tension between the US and the USSR. This happened because of the fear of the spread of communism, and the USSR was setting up left-wing governments in the countries of East Europe. This led to the space race and the arms race as both sides tried to control space. On October 4th, 1957, the USSR launched Sputnik into space. Sputnik was the first artificial satellite to be put into space. Sputnik was an 187-pound metal sphere the size of a basketball. It orbited for 3 months until it fell out of orbit on January of 1958. The only cargo in Sputnik was a low-power radio transmitter that would broadcast a beeping noise that could be heard by radio listeners around the world. On September 12, 1962, JFK delivered a historical speech regarding the plan to land on the moon. In his speech, he announced that the United States would send astronauts to the moon by the end of the decade. JFK's famous quote from the speech was, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard." The purpose of the speech was not only to gain public support for the moon landing, but also to inform the Americans that the government would be increasing NASA's budget.
The Apollo program was started in 1961 when the space race was started between the Soviet Union and the United States. It wasn't a very supported program at first. Even worse, the first Apollo mission ended in a disaster, which I will talk about now. On January 27, 1967, a horrible tragedy claimed the lives of astronauts Virgil Grissom, Edwards White, and Roger Chaffee. During a pre-flight test, there was a fire in the building that killed all 3 astronauts, plus a few other people. This would lead to the Apollo 1 mission being cancelled and the missions being postponed. After several unsuccessful attempts at sending people to the moon, on July 20th, 1969, the first spacecraft to the moon left Earth and reached its destination. The Apollo 11 mission had been in the works for a while. NASA had created the Saturn V rocket and the Eagle lander, which were piloted by astronauts Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin, and Michael Collins. They would launch on July 16th and land on July 20th, and return on July 24th. This 8-day trip to the moon and back would be the single factor that ended the space race and caused bankruptcy in the Soviet Union.
After Apollo 11, there were 6 more trips to the moon, 5 of which landed successfully. 12 men in total walked on the lunar surface, but in 1970, all future Apollo missions were cancelled, mainly because of the lack of money, and Apollo 17 then became the last crewed mission to the moon. Back in the 1970s, Luna 17 was launched by the Soviet Union into space. This was their first successful unmanned moon mission. It was made in response to the USA's now famous Apollo 11 mission that landed on the moon for the first time in history. Luna 17 deployed the first robotic rover on the surface of the moon. Luna 17 is a not very well known mission because it was obscured by the most famous moon landing performed by the USA. While the Apollo missions ended and humans haven't made contact with the moon since the 70s, we do plan on going back. The recent Artemis Mission 1 was the first time in a while a spacecraft has gone to the moon. Better yet, NASA plans on sending astronauts to the moon in the upcoming Artemis 2 mission. And it doesn't stop there. Elon Musk, a very well-known billionaire who owns many valuable companies, plans on creating the first ever mission to Mars in his new Starship rocket. The rocket will be fully reusable, so yes, we will go back, probably in your lifetime.
And that's all about the Apollo mission from Keen and Atlas. Thank you for watching.